Welcome back to another good, the bad, and the ugly. And this time, they're not ugly, they're all handsome and stuff. It's the Blood Angels. Da, 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 da.
Hooray!
Hooray indeed.
Yes.
So another Space Marines Codex supplement here. This time it is the Sons of Sanguinius. And for the most part, it's a pretty good book.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I've used it a couple of times now. There's some excellent synergies in there. So we're going to do a good, a bad, and the ugly. So this is more like our top picks, our initial thoughts. We will, at some point in the near future, do a deep dive into this codex and then look at more of the things like synergies and stuff and certain ideas that we can do to pull the army together and make it work at a very efficient level. And there's definitely some stuff in here where you can make some pretty nasty lists.
Yeah.
Yes, you have lost some of your toys, Blood Angels. Some of the stratagems which you have been relying on are definitely gone. However, with a bit of imagination, you can still get some very effective, punchy lists out of this book. So if I was a Blood Angel player, I'd be very happy. So shall we jump straight in?
Let's do it.
Okay.
We got the good coming up in just a minute.
We're going to start, well, we'll just do the good now.
Oh, it's going to do it right now,
We're just going to do it right now.
Very good.
We're just going to jump in.
I'm going to go into the Time of Power because I'm less familiar with the Blood Angels.
Yeah.
Just so I have a reference, but let's start off with...
Let's start off with the good. So the characters, I think the named characters in general are all pretty good.
Yeah.
It'll be dependent on the sorts of lists that you build as to which characters are going to be more effective than others. There are some different sorts of options that you can build with Blood Angels, especially when you're looking at your alpha units. But I think in general they're very good. There are a couple of units which a couple of standouts for me which I really enjoy. I'm a big fan of the Sanguinor. I think he's really good. There's a couple of special rules that he does that can, when used correctly, can be really effective. The fact that he gives you the +1 attack or +1 to hit? I believe it's +1 attack.
So for core and characters within 6, you add 1 to the attack's characteristic.
Yes, as long as it's not in the assault doctrine, right?
No, it's not cumulative with shock assault.
Oh, it's not cumulative with shock assault. Okay, cool. But what that does is it effectively gives you a... well, it's the same, actually.
Yeah,
really.
It's kind of cool because it sort of goes with the fluff. Like he sort of appears in like desperate times of need. So like if they're in the middle of a battle,
middle of combat,
a turn's already gone, he comes down and then can give them another attack as if they've charged. It's pretty cool.
which is nice.
Yeah.
He's also got a special rule where he can just arrive within engagement range.
It's very unique.
It's very unique,
Yeah.
and actually can be very handy. So if your unit of Death Company, for example, or Sanguinary Guard, or a key unit is charged, and you really need that unit to survive, and you don't really need the Sanguinor because he's good, but he's not great. In that he's not going to destroy an entire army. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas a Death Company unit can, especially if you're playing Black Legion, right, Beard?
Yeah. Yeah, good times.
I'm sorry. But so he has a rule where he can do that. And then there's a stratagem which I believe is called, pull it up for me, Beard. It's something like, I think it's called the Angel Sacrifice. For a CP where when he arrives, everyone has to attack him.
Yes. Select 1 Blood Angel's character, excluding vehicles from your army until the end of the phase. Each time an enemy unit is selected to fight, if a model in that unit is within engagement range of that character, when your opponent is selecting targets for this attacks, those attacks can only target that character unit.
Yeah. It's a nifty little trick.
It's pretty cool.
So he does become sacrificial, I suppose.
He'll die.
In that sense, he will probably die if it's a big combat unit which can do the work. However, it can mitigate some, if not all, of the attacks which are going into your key unit, your Sanguinary Guard, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Who will then be free to attack that unit back and potentially kill it. What it does is it gives a certain level of decision making and threat to your opponent if you know that the Sanguinor is just hanging out there. Do I want to charge into that unit knowing that you have this kind of possible get out of jail free card?
Yeah.
And for those reasons, I think he's really interesting and quite
For sure. With that rule, so it's called Miraculous Savior, and you do it at the end of the heroic intervention step of your opponent's charge phase. If he's not been set up on the battlefield yet. So if you've got him reserve, he can come down then, which is really unusual. If any enemy units finish a charge move within engagement range of any friendly Blood Angels units in that phase, you can set up this model within engagement range of one of those enemy units. The model counts as having performed a heroic intervention in the turn that uses the ability. So there's no like deep striking hoping you get a charge off. It's like, whee, boop, there he is.
And now you have a problem.
Yeah, and then you spend the command point so that really key unit that's gone to go and kill a Sanguinary Guard, all of a sudden they're like, oh no, we're going to kill this guy now.
Yeah.
So it's really, really good.
I quite like it. And for that's the reason I think he's a really good choice.
Yeah.
Again, most of these guys' choices are really good.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends on how you're building your list.
Yeah, and if he does manage to survive, he can then fall back and charge in the following turn, and heroic intervention can be done within 6 inches.
Yeah, and he can Barney. He's got a bunch of attacks.
That's
he can
all right.
do some work. Yeah, I think he's good. I think he's a really interesting character to consider having in your list.
Yeah,
and I believe he's 150 points, which is cheap, really, for that. Like to save a key unit. Yeah, I like that.
100%.
So I give him a good.
Lovely.
Now there's another couple here. There's again, we're just kind of picking two which have really kind of spoke out to us.
Yeah.
Brother
Corbulo,
or even just a Sanguinary Priest, I actually think are really good now.
Yep.
There's a lot of talk about people bringing drop pods back with foot slogging. Death Company at the moment, and then having chaplains in there to make sure that they're getting those 7-inch charges, all that sort of stuff going on. What these guys do, which I think is really interesting, is that if you're within 6 inches of them, when you're making an attack, even if you're in the Devastator or the Tactical Doctrine, it counts as them being in the Assault Doctrine, which is a really, really, really nifty rule. Savage Echoes is a very powerful chapter doctrine.
Yeah.
It's the doctrines. I'm not making that up. That's what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So to just have that, especially if you're going for that drop pod attack, those turn 1, turn 2 charges, to get that extra attack in there, and if you're doing it with all the other buffing characters, it just makes them very, even more potent.
Yeah.
I'm in two minds about which one I would take, whether it would be Brother or a Sanguinary Priest, because I'm not sure that you could give something like the because you've got that relic in the Space Marines called the Vox of Spirit. We are now talking slight synergies here. I know we said we wouldn't do this, but this is something that I think is really interesting. I don't think you could give him the Vox of Spiritum to give that a 9-inch aura. Well, but you could with the Sanguinary Priest, just because he's a named character.
Yeah, he's also technically already got a relic with his Heaven's Teeth, which is a very cool name, Heaven's Teeth Chainsword, so he wouldn't be able to have an additional relic. Yeah,
so you could put that on the Sanguinary Priest, so you've got a bit more utility as how, if you really want to charge the entirety of your enemy's line, you've got that Sanguinary Priest in there, and his aura ability is 9 inches instead of 6. It could be really interesting.
Yeah.
But I think I think those units are really interesting. I think they're good.
I think so too. Yeah. I think you're right. Between Brother Corbulo and the normal Sanguinary Priest, it's a difference of about 25 points. But with Brother Corbulo, they both grant the 6-up shrug within units within 3 inches. Brother Corbulo is able to do his combat restoratives twice at the end of the movement phase, which is interesting. He is also a bit more killy, so if he does end up in combat, he has additional attack, because his Heaven's Teeth, although it's a chainsword, you don't get the +1 attack with Heaven's Teeth, but it is strength 5 and is -2 AP, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, which is nice.
So it's a difficult one. Again, it sort of depends on
how you're running it.
Yeah, and how many points you might have spare in the list that you've made. So you've got a good couple of options for two pretty decent Sanguinary Priest character options there.
Yeah,
they're good.
Exactly. Yeah,
I like them.
I like them too. And like I say, like there's a lot of characters in here which are really interesting. I mean, if you are running Death Company, Lamates is very good, even just giving you those reroll charges, and then you add with the Canticle of Hate on there as well to get the +2 to the charge. There's interesting stuff that you can do with Astarath as well. I think depending on how you're building your lists is the sort of characters you could take. It doesn't feel like there are too many dead named characters, which is rare, actually.
Yeah.
You look at the Space Wolves, for example, there are dead characters everywhere which you're just not going to see.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels a lot more with the Blood Angels, like you're going to get a bit more utility out of them. So in general, I think the characters are good.
Yeah, and if you're running Flesh Tearers, Gabriel Seth is still a bad man.
Yeah.
Still a bad man.
An absolute weapon there. So we move on to some units now.
Yep.
I still think the Sanguinary Guard are quite good.
I agree.
Yes, they're not as potent as they were, but if you tool them up properly, they can deliver devastating blows. The fact that they've got an inbuilt -1 in combat now with the Angel's Visage.
The Angelic Visage.
Angelic Visage is really cool.
Yeah.
It makes them just that little bit more survivable. They're still 2 wounds, they've still got a 2-up armor. Yes, you can't give them the 5-up shrugs anymore, that is gone. But still, if you're using them properly, when they hit, they should really remove what they're going into combat with.
Yes.
Anyway, if you can get your Warlord near them, hey, guess what? You're getting that +1 attack. A +1 to hit, rather, as well. So then, if you are taking things like Power Fists on there, I mean, it kind of negates that, right? They're core as well, so they will be getting the rerolls from Rites of Battle.
Pretty tasty.
The other aura from your lieutenants and stuff. So when they're buffed up correctly, they're pretty good. I'm a big fan of the swords now. You like the axes?
Well, I kind of like that they have so many options.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that you can take them with swords or axes or fists, or you want to throw in an Inferno pistol or a Plasma pistol or whatever. If this is going to be one of your core units, it's nice to be able to make them kind of whatever you want them to be.
Yeah.
So they're super interesting. You're going to need to magnetize them.
Yes, you are.
I think that this is a good unit to invest some time in magnetizing. But yeah, they're fantastic. They're really good, and I rate them. I think they're great.
Good. Same here. Then we move over to the Death Company. Look, Death Company are good. Yes, you can only take them in units of 10 now. Yes, they do have some slight drawbacks, but I still really rate them. I think they're reasonably priced. They're cheaper than the Sanguinary Guard and can actually do a bit more damage as well. If you were to compare them, again, it depends on the sort of buffing units that you're going to have in your army. But I really like them. Fallen Fury, again, you're still getting a 24-inch move before the battle begins with a unit of 10 of them if you start them on the board. No, you can no longer advance anymore, which is something that I missed, but I've now seen that. And don't worry, I haven't done it in any games because I don't go first anymore. But they put out a whole bunch of attacks. Black Rage gives you those extra attacks as well. I really like them. They've been balanced out a bit though, which is nice. I mean, there are certain stratagems which people were using. So you'd use Upon Wings of Fire to just move, Lamates up there with them to make sure you're getting those reroll hits or those extra on the charges or whatever it was. I mean, that stratagem has now changed. So you do it and then he comes down in your next reinforcement phase. So you've got to do a bit more planning with them. They can't fall back out of combat now. Yeah. But I mean, fluff-wise, that's really cool.
It's very cool.
It's very cool. However, there is a game coming up where you can see how they're now quite counterable in that. So you can see there's ways to now counter the Death Company, whereas before whatever they got into combat were just going to go nom 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 nom, and that was the end. I still think they're really, really good though. Really, really good. The fact that, and they still have stratagems, so you can shrug on fives with them, but otherwise they've still got their 6-up shrug, and they are 2 wounds now. So I'm a big fan. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. I hasten to agree. I've seen them plenty of times in the past. I've faced them recently, as you may have seen with the Black Legion game, and they can, like, used in the right way, they do just muller things.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for anyone that's a current Blood Angels player, certainly with Death Company, you're gonna have to think slightly differently about how to run them, and how to really utilize their strengths and balance it with their weaknesses. But they're still very good.
Yeah, I like them. I like them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely space for them in all of your Blood Angels armies, and this supplement seems to lean a little bit towards more Death Company stuff. Anyway, I mean, with stuff like making your Death Company captains and stuff with the Visions of Sanguinius, which it's good. Yeah, they can actually do quite a lot of work. These lone captains swinging their thunder hammers or whatever weapon you choose to give them, running around the board. I like the fluff and feel of this codex as well. I think that is good. There's definitely a feeling of. It's weird, like they're kind of on their last legs a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It's like they have all these like huge amount of attacks and stuff, but then it's they have to get stuck in combat. They fall to the rage, and there's all this sort of stuff going on. It's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's really good, and long may that continue. Like, we're starting to see that more and more with these new codexes. I think for the flaws we've seen in some of the books and some of the frustrations with some rules, I think that the real flavour and feel of the armies has really been coming out with these books. So yes, we like that a lot, don't we?
Like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Look, there's a lot more good in this book.
Yeah, plenty.
This is just our kind of top picks. Again, like I say, we're going to do a proper synergy breakdown soon. I've got some ideas for some really nasty lists with these. I know Lawrence definitely has some. He's always talking about his flesh terrors. So we'll do more of a tactical breakdown later on. But for now, that is the top picks of the good from the Codex supplement. Let's move on to the bad. Okay, so we now move to the bad.
Luckily, there's not a lot.
There's not too much bad.
Bad.
There's not too much bad in here. We'll touch briefly on some of the stratagem changes as well, but we're mainly focusing on units. Let's just jump in. I said that most of the characters are good, and they are. The only one that I see no space in my army for is Captain Tycho. I don't get it. I do get it. I understand there's fluff behind him and stories, and if you're using him, it's probably more of that sort of thing.
It's probably reserved for narrative games.
Narrative sorts of games and all that sort of stuff. But if you're looking at it from like a competitive standpoint, I don't really think he gives much to your army.
Yeah, I mean, he in the storyline, he's dead.
Yes.
So he's in this book because I'm presuming because he has a model. He fell to the Black Rage and then was killed by orcs, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, he has some benefits if he's facing orcs, but aside from that, there's no way you take him over anything else.
Yeah.
And in more than 40k, he doesn't exist. So
yeah,
definitely one for narrative, but there's not really much to go. Not much going for him.
No. I just
sadly
he is one of those what we call literally. He's a dead character.
Yeah. And he's got his weapon's called the Dead Man's Hand.
Well, there you go.
So,
Yeah. It's just, he doesn't add anything to your army that something else can't do better.
Yeah.
So, unless, like you say, using him for narrative, there's no real reason to have him. Yeah. This might be slightly controversial, what we're about to say here, but it's another one of those things. I don't think the Baal Predator's any good. Not when you just compare it to a normal predator.
Yeah.
The reason being that the special weapons that you can kind of apply to this tank are not enough for me to go, oh yes, I definitely am going to do that.
Yeah.
Really, it's the Baal, what's it called?
The Baal Flamestorm Cannon.
Yeah, so it's 18-inch range,
Yep.
D6, strength 6, -2, flat 2 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, okay,
Right.
fine, yeah, okay. And then you can put flamers on the side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure, fine. It comes out at about 150 or so points
Well,
if you do that. If you wanted a flame tank.
Yeah, if you put the heavy flamer on, it's 150 points.
Yeah. So I'm just not too enamored with it. Any kind of random weaponry for me is a bit random.
Yeah.
So D6 shots are all well and good. If you're rolling 4s, 5s, and 6s, if you're not, it's not that great. I think, and using tanks for anti-infantry these days, you can get anti-infantry in so many other places.
Yeah.
More efficient, and a lot more weight of dice. It just seems like a point sink. So again, it's one of those ones where narratively, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Bile Predator. Yeah, I'll take one of them. That's badass.
Yeah.
Points, why, if you want, you can just do it better elsewhere.
Yeah.
You can just do it better elsewhere.
And it's weird, it's gimmick, which is overcharged engines. You can, instead of advancing, you can just move at 6.
Yeah.
But then it can't shoot any of its weapons because they're all heavy. So that just feels really weird.
Yeah, if it was an assault flamer tank, I'd be like, oh right, let's rock and roll. But it's not, unless we've missed a special rule or something like that.
Well, actually, each time the model advances, do not make an advance roll. Instead, until the end of the phase, add 6 to the move characteristic. So we could shoot it. Am I reading that right?
No, because he's still advanced.
Still advancing, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bit odd. It's a bit odd.
Yeah, because that's like with the Orc bikes, for example. Instead of rolling for the advance, you just automatically. So it's like any of the bikes.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing.
Yeah, because it is advancing.
Yeah, it is advancing.
Yeah, I mean, you can switch out the flamestone cannon with a twin assault cannon, but it's still heavy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's maybe we're missing something. I don't think we are.
I think the model exists, and therefore it must be in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And look, again, narratively, I mean, if you're, fine, awesome. And you could have a heap of fun with a flame tank of doom running around. I get it. But it doesn't fulfill a role that another thing can not do better. I think I said that sentence correctly.
I think it's perfect.
Was it all right?
Yeah.
I tried my best. So yeah, we've got them. Those are the two standout bad ones, I think. Some of the stratagems that you guys lost, I get that that's kind of frustrating. Like the 3d6 charge, losing that stung. But there are ways around it now, especially with Death Company. Like if you're using Lamates and you need to get that charge off, if you can get him in the right position, use Commanding Orator. So you've got a 7-inch charge there. It doesn't stack with their initial +1. So you've got a 7-inch charge there. And because everything's Death Company, you're re-rolling those charges anyway. So sure, it doesn't really help with your Sanguinary Guard, but there's ways around that with the Sanguinary Guard as well. Because the Chaplain Litany would still work if you were using it. And then you've got, if you want to bring the Sanguinary Ancient along, you can give him the Icon of the Angels, and then you're re-rolling charges for just Blood Angels units, full stop.
Yeah.
That's any unit as well. It doesn't say core or anything like that. So you can still get a similar thing without the stratagem. Losing things like, I believe it was Red Rampage to give your characters extra attacks and stuff. I get it, but Space Wolves lost the touch of the wild, So it does feel like you've lost a little bit of your punch. But you can still get the same sorts of, what's the word I'm looking for? Potency from your list. You've just got to use it quite differently. But like from a Blood Angel's perspective, yeah, it is kind of bad. It is bad that the Sanguinary Guard are slightly more killable now than they were. It is bad that, there was another stratagem I was thinking on which has disappeared. Anyway, but it is kind of bad, but you still will be able to do these things. You just need to change your game plan a little bit, and there's really is some good stuff here. But those would be my bad picks.
Agreement.
Much agreement.
Muchly.
We're good. That's bad. So there's not that much bad. I think it's a good book.
And that's good.
Yeah, that is good. It's the opposite of bad.
Yeah.
We'll now talk about the ugly. We now move on to the ugly. Yes. So there are a couple of, just going back, yes, most of the characters are good, and even these characters can be good in certain situations, but there are a couple that I feel are a bit ugly. Mephiston. We all know I have a love-hate relationship with Mephiston. However, the last 2 games I've used him, he's done some really good stuff. I don't know what I want him to be, but it's not this.
It's weird, isn't it?
I don't know what I want him to be. Because the thing is, with your... Okay, so not always, but I find using psychers, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or right here, you want them more as kind of like buffing characters to buff key units so they can actually do the work.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to not get these sorts of guys into combat, generally. Whereas Mephiston is kind of like, he's not... I mean, there's nothing great about his psychic ability, as he can cast 2 powers. He can deny 2 or deny 3?
Manifest 2, and you can deny 2.
Deny 2, okay.
Yeah.
He has a psychic hood, so you can get a +1 to your deny, but there's no... So he's not like this great psyker. He's just a psyker. But then he's also pretty good in combat, right? But you kind of don't want to get him into combat because you want him to survive, so you've got your psychic ability to use. But then, if you don't get him into combat, he's like 155 points or whatever, and he feels a bit wasted.
Yeah.
So he's ugly because he's more like, I guess the way you've got to use him, he's more like a character which can Barney, because he's not bad in combat at all. A character that can Barney, and the bonus is that he does psychic powers. Yeah. That's kind of the way that you've got to look at it. But he's a chief librarian. There should be more focus on his psychic ability.
It's a weird one. I feel like he is sort of being put forward as like a battle mage sort of thing.
Yeah, and I get it.
So he's the Lord of Death.
Yeah.
So I suppose they've designed him in a way that he does want to get into combat.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows 3 powers, so you could give him all 3 of the offensive psychic powers.
Yeah, and then for a CP, you can cast them all.
Yeah.
If you want to. But he should. I mean, if he is a chief librarian, in my opinion, he should be casting them all anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like because I feel like you're paying the extra points for the combat ability, and I guess you are. So this is what he just doesn't. I don't know. Like me personally, he doesn't feel. I don't know. There's something missing. Something missing.
I don't know what you mean.
He seems kind of like he's a bit middle of the road, because there are characters that can fight better than him, and there are psychers that can do more psychic than him. Potentially not in the Blood Angels Codex. I understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's why I think he's ugly.
Yeah.
That's why. Physically. He's radiant.
He's beautiful.
He's a beautiful man.
Yeah.
Angry man, but beautiful.
I think they
have... You kind of know what I mean?
Yeah. I think they have designed him to be a character you do want to get close up and get into combat.
Yeah.
Because he has speed of the Primar, because his Warlord trait, you have to take that, so he will fight first.
If you make him your Warlord.
I mean, you can give him Wings of Sanguinius, and he's very, very fast, so he'll move 12.
Can become a bit of a missile, because you move him 7 first, which is his base move.
You could then give him the Quickening, so you can re-roll his charge rolls, and you have plus D3 to his attack, so he's got a minimum of 7 attacks on the charge. Maybe that's what he's supposed to be.
Maybe he's that.
Maybe. But it is a little bit confusing because that's not clear. It's not like, yes, he is the character that I want to get into combat and kill everything.
Yeah.
It's not clear. He's a very confusing man.
Yes, he is. I know Invulnerable Save is interesting, but he does shrug on 5s and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just using him wrong. Maybe I need to let go of my dream of what I thought he should have been.
Maybe next game you should just fling him up there.
Yeah, and just see what happens. Well, I won't ruin the surprise of the last game.
Okay.
Let's just say there were some interesting things that happened. Another ugly character, and again, in the right situations, he can be very good, but is Commander Dante. Now, he does have some really cool rules, actually.
Yeah.
He does have some really cool rules. I mean, he is a chapter master, so you can, in your command phase, you can choose one unit, they can reroll all of their hits. Great. He has rights of battle. Great. He's also -1 to hit in combat, I believe, because he's got a death mask.
Yes,
he's got angelic
he
visage.
is -1 to hit.
Yes, and he also has a very cool rule that he can use
not just combat.
not just combat.
No,
and
each
shooting
time an
as
attack
well.
is made.
Ah, there you go. And he's also got a really cool rule, which is end of. He can. It's epic. What's it? I can't really see from here.
Epic hero of the Imperium.
Yeah, so he can use an epic deed stratagem once per battle for free.
Yeah,
Which is cool.
it's very cool.
Like, there's lots of cool stuff about him.
Yeah.
His weapon's not terrible either. I believe it becomes strength 7 minus 3 flat 2 damage.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Yeah, I think he's pretty good. Where he slightly falls down, and he would be a difficult one to not point like this, because he can do some really epic stuff, and if he was less points, then you'd be like, okay, well, this is really good. But at 175 points, and considering all of the characters are already very, very expensive, again, I think all the Blood Angels characters are actually pointed pretty appropriately, but that doesn't mean that they're not expensive to take in your army. If you're taking 3 characters, you're probably spending about 400 to 500 points on characters in a battalion there.
Got points.
So it's a big point sink. Is he going to make his points back? He can do. If he gets caught out in combat, he's got 6 wounds now. He does have a 2-up save. He's got a 4-up invulnerable. Is he going to survive against like an elite unit of heavy hitters? Probably not.
Yeah.
And then that's 175 points sunk into one model.
And I think as well, with his it's always nice having a chapter master reroll.
Yeah.
But with the sheer amount of attacks that most of the units he's going to be buffing have already, do you need it?
Yeah.
Really?
Because you're gonna, if you're probably taking a captain anyway, so you will be getting those reroll ones, and depending on the sorts of units that you're going to be there, if it's Sanguinary Guard, they're getting a +1 to their attack anyway. Tricky one.
It's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one. He can do some amazing things.
Yeah.
But he also is, it's a lot of points. It's a lot of points to sink into one model, which actually, once he gets out into the open, isn't that survivable.
Yeah.
So he becomes a really powerful buffing character, which you use cagely. But because the Blood Angels are quite elite anyway, generally, depending on how you build them, but generally, well, Space Marines are. Anyway, it's an interesting, I worry, I've used him, and I worry how good he can be going forward. I think he's ugly. I think he can be good, and I think he can be quite bad. But also, I don't know how you'd point him. I think 175. I think he's a bit much.
If he was any lower than that, then it would be.
I'm taking him all the time.
Yeah.
I'm taking him all the time. So it just depends on the kind of list you're building once again. So next we had the Sanguinary Ancient.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the Sanguinary Ancient is ugly. Again, it's 125 points, but you kind of go, yeah, okay, fine. I can kind of get on board with that. I mean, in the command phase, you can choose a unit to add 1 to the attacks, is that right? Or add 1 to the hit roll?
Add 1 to the hit roll.
Add 1 to the hit roll.
In the
So
command
that's,
phase,
that's not bad. And it's just core units, I'm assuming, or is it just Blood Angel units?
Core units within 6.
Okay, cool. And that's not bad. That's not a bad thing to do. The banner is nowhere near as potent as it was. The icon of the angels, like giving reroll charges to everything, not just core, is actually really good. But it's not giving you that shrug anymore, and you're not getting the reroll ones to wound, which I believe it used to give inherently. So why it's ugly is there's still definitely a spot in a list for him, depending on the sort of, list that you're building. Like we've kind of spoken about, where the re-rolling charges and all that sort of stuff can be really handy.
Yeah.
But he's not, especially if you were running Sanguinary Guard, he used to be a must take, whereas now he's not. You can make do without him, building your list in a different way.
He's a maybe take.
Which made him go from really good to good, depending on what you're doing with him.
I think the ugly rating we're giving it is really highlighting how much he's changed.
Yeah.
I mean, for people that like to run Sanguinary Guard, then he's a pretty pretty okay choice, but compared to what he was, it's very different.
Yeah, very different.
Indeed.
Still good, but more ugly than good.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about Death Company. We'll move on now. The Death Company intercessors, as they stand, I'm going to say are ugly. It's a very different style army that you're building if you're starting to go down the Primaris route at the moment. And these guys are no exception to that. They're not, you will be foot slogging them. You do not have access to drop pods. So the only way you're going to be getting them up the board, which is what you want to do, is in impulsors. Which isn't necessarily a bad choice. It's not necessarily a bad choice at all, actually. It's definitely one way of running lists like this. But they are a big points sink investment because of that. You could only, and if you are running them up the board, unless you want to foot slog a unit of 10, power to you, but I wouldn't recommend it. You know, there's still too much damage to weaponry, which, yes, they do have a shrug, but they're not fast enough to get up the board without being shot off the board. That's what kind of makes them ugly for me. We get a Primaris drop pod, I'm in. You know, they lose the ability, unless I've just completely missed it and they've suddenly given them jump packs, but I don't think they have.
They don't have jump packs.
No, I think I would know about that.
It's an interesting one. I mean, I kind of like the idea of having 6 in an impulsor, or having 3 units of 5 or 6 in an impulsor and getting them up that way, because they do have 3 attack space. And if you run them as assault intercessor, they have 4 attack space, they have +1 for the charge, and they have another one for the other thing
Black
that they
Rage.
get. For Black Rage.
It's a lot of attack.
It's a lot of attacks. And if you think about the fact that you could give the Sergeant a Thunderhammer, that's kind of cool.
Yep.
Or a Power Fist, that's also pretty cool. Just would you take them over normal Death Company?
No.
There's far more options you have in terms of getting these combat-based Marines into combat when they are normal Marines.
How many wounds are the Death Company intercessors? There's still 2.
They're 2 wounds, so it's same as normal. But you get jump packs with the Death Company Marines. You can get drop pods, like you've just said.
Yeah.
Rhinos, you can put 10 of them in rather than 6 in an impulsor.
Yeah.
There's just far more options in terms of moving them up the board.
Yes.
And yeah, you only really have the option of impulsors. You could use repulse if you want, but then that's going to be most of your army.
Point sink.
Yeah, even if you take 2 units, then that's not enough probably to.
And you've got all your points tied up in those impulsors, which are no longer core, so you're not getting any rerolls with them. And they're not really playing to the army's strength, which is being in combat and speed. And so that's where I kind of go. Once you get them into combat, hey, it's a party. We're all having a great time. There's lots of death, there's rip, there's tear, there's all of the nice things that you need. There are certainly ways that you can run them which make them effective, but it's a different sort of list, and the points investment you have to really consider, is it worth it, considering you've got a different model that can do it exactly the same way. And yes, they'll get slightly less attacks, but I would trade that for speed and mobility any day. That's just me, though, right? So that is the ugly section. There's the ugly section done. Look, like I say, we did talk a little bit about synergy, but we want to try and keep these ones a bit punchier for you. Yeah. Get you into the action. Trim off all of the fat. But we'll do a big table sit down, and really kind of break this down, and you know, look at all of the synergies and different things that you can do with them.
And we can spend some looking at the artwork, because it is very good.
The artwork is
very good.
Lovely. But look, for a stamp for the book, I'm going to give it a good.
Yeah!
I'm going to give it a good. Yes, it is very different. Yes,
Seal of approval.
Yeah, you will have to think slightly differently about how to use this army than you've been used to using the Blood Angels.
Would you say it's a more fun army to use with this book than they used to be?
I think... that's an interesting one. I don't know, actually. I think that it feels a little bit more realised in terms of fluff. Is it more fun? Depends how you're playing your army. Like, there was something cool about having, you know, you drop down that unit and it's got the 3 you know, the 3d6 charge, and then you've got the Fallen Fury with the advance chucked in there, and then you know, upon Wings of Fire, your Lamate's up there, and you've got 20 Death Company that just smash into the lines and remove everything. I mean, that is fun. It's also fun to watch the life die in the eyes of your opponent. Will it be more fun to play against? Yeah. Yeah, it will. Good Blood Angels players, I'm not one by any stretch of the imagination, but they could be absolutely savage with this army and do some horrific work with it. So I think all in all, it balances them out as a force more. And I think we've seen that a lot with Space Marines in general, which is, I think, a good thing for the game. So the answer is sort of more fun in the grand scheme of things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed that. This has been me, the Bone, and you, the Beard. This has been the good, the bad, and the ugly of the new Blood Angels Codex supplement. We hope you enjoyed that. Plenty more to come with the Blood Angels. We've got another game coming out soon over on Demand. Do check it out. But until then, you keep being bosses, and we will see you all very, very soon.